right, we'll get started. So we'll start off with Michael Brown, Parks Director for the kiosk and vehicular wayfinding signs. Michael?
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. I'm in front of you today to discuss moving on with the informational trail kiosk that we have a Land Water Conservation Fund grant to pay for 50% of that. RDG Planning and Design has been our consultant on this from the get-go. They've got a concept for these, and they've got rough drawings, but they're requesting an ad service to finalize the drawings and prepare the bid documents so that we can advertise for bid and get these constructed this year. The colored drawing I have there, the kiosk concept is the bottom half of that, and the top half was a large monument that was proposed at the base of Casper Mountain. But at this time, that's not part of any plans right now. That may come down the line. Next page is the rough dimensional drawings that they have for construction, but they're not complete yet. So that's what the request is for. In their email, I highlighted the additional service request for the kiosk project. Their scope of work is to finalize the designs, prepare a revised notice to bidders, and prepare materials for a commissioner public hearing in consideration of the documents. Also prepare the project manual and specs, host a pre-bid meeting, most likely virtually. These guys are out of Omaha and Iowa and some other places in the Midwest. And then they would assist in reviewing and certifying the bids so that we know these bidders have met the specifications that they're requiring on the project. So to get to that point, they're requesting an additional $18,000 as an ad service to finalize this project. If the county decides that we'd like them to do the construction administration, that would be an additional $16,000 if they come out and they watch the construction process and so on and so forth. I've attached the scope of work from the LWCF grant, and there is a table with approximate estimate. This was created by RDG for description of work and total costs. It was approved to sign the grant, which was for a total of $230,000. It's a 50% match, so the total project estimate is $460,000 to construct these 4 kiosks. In addition to the grant, Visit Casper has provided the county, I believe, $110,000 to construct one of these kiosks at the Casper Mountain Trail Center. That was not included in part of the grant. There was a short timeline on applying for this grant, so we stuck with Natrona County owned properties, not Natrona County leased properties, because it was going to take too much time to determine the long-term lease, get that information and put it into the grant application. So where these 4 kiosks are proposed is one is at the biathlon range, one is at the archery range, and 2 of them are at Bear Trap Meadows. These kiosks would have trail information, camping information. Right now, they're just a blank slate. We haven't determined what materials would be on these kiosks at that time, at this time. Also included in the package is the previous agreement that has been used for preparing vehicle wayfinding signs, as well as these kiosk designs and proposed locations. And I believe I would have to double check. For some reason, I'm thinking that the funding for this contract came from Visit Casper, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Yes, so, yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. So that's a quick summary of what I've provided. I'm open to answer any questions you may have.
Michael, so under 6, 7, and 8 of the contract, is that not what they're asking to add on now? It's already written in the contract.
Oh, an exhibit? Yeah, okay. Yeah, how's that read?
You're talking about the,
So this, I believe, refers to what I call the vehicular wayfinding signs. These were 5-foot by 6-foot metal signs to direct people to different sites. We had a subcommittee that worked on that and came up with finalized plan. So I believe that's a separate, let me see.
So, Michael,
Yes.
the Natrona County contract, Natrona County park signage and wayfinding that you've attached, and the chairman was just referring to Exhibit A.
Yeah.
Is that unrelated completely to the kiosks?
So this contract was particularly specific to the vehicle wayfinding and signage like you were talking about, but included in here was under Exhibit B was the additional scope, the fee items requested, pedestrian trail kiosks, and in there, I think they talk about the cost of those. They also had pedestrian trail side signs, which we're not doing, trail markers, which they're not providing. We're working on that ourselves, on the individual pedestrian trails. So I believe it's under Exhibit B. Well, let me, Stephen, that's about the graphic design for the kiosk. Let me.
Michael,
Yes, sir.
I thought when we did this, it was the kiosk and the wayfinding all together. Was it just the wayfinding then? and
That
we
was my
need to come back
understanding
to the
when I had-
kiosk?
When I had the discussion, yeah, I know there was an ad service to this when we were doing the vehicular wayfinding. I think due to some changes in the scope of the work, and I believe that was $5,500, which I was unable to find that document that stated that. So I believe this was all for the vehicular signage, and then the ad services were to finalize the design. I can go back to them. I discussed this with them, and that's, their email was their response to continue into that. I can definitely go through this with legal to determine if it's included in here.
Yeah, 'cause
So, Michael,
I'm sorry, but I thought it was all told together, Dave. Do you remember? I mean, I've slept since then.
What ended up happening, it was a cluster. The bid did not get signed for the vehicle wayfinding stuff. so those signs never got built.
Cor-
And
Correct.
that was something, that was something that slipped through legal. And so, if I remember right, that's what it was.
And where those stand, the vehicular signs right now is Visit Casper's having some conversations about doing some of the city MPO vehicular signs to get people from David Street Station to the mountain. And so I'm talking with them because I think it would be wise if we're going to rebid this, maybe we can partner and have it as one continuous project up there. I mean, the signs are defined, they're clarified, but yes,
So then it sounds like we don't have a contract for the wayfinding signs or for the kiosks then, right? Is that what,
we don't have a contract with a contractor to construct the vehicular wayfinding signs. We never had anything on the kiosks,
with just the design?
just this preliminary design that's in here.
Okay.
Under the scope of work on Exhibit A, I see paragraph 5A4, preliminary sign design location, pedestrian trail kiosks, a sign located at the trailhead or entrance showing various trail systems, park attributes, and elements. I think it was confusing to me because the amounts they requested and how they identified them fit exactly with what Exhibit A already includes within the scope of work. Final design documents, 18,100. Construction administration, 16,200. All of the total sum of 74,900. So, I think that's where some of the confusion comes from. And then I'm not entirely clear what they've done, what they haven't done, what they've been paid for to date.
Okay.
Have they already received all that $74,000?
No, I believe it was, I'll have to look back at last year's line item, at their invoices, but I believe it was 42,000 that they received, and then there was an ad service, I think, of 5,500, which I'm not sure if they received that or not.
My preference would be perhaps to get some guidance from legal after you get all the documentation and emails together, and then let legal advise you and us on what's already been paid for, what falls under this existing 2021 contract, and what is still out there to be contracted with down the road.
Yeah, because some of that stuff goes back 2 years. I mean, it's old, and so, Cindy, can we get that information on there as far as what has been paid, what line item, and just exactly how much that is? 'Cause that'll help out everybody. And I know this was something that went back and forth for a long time, and my understanding was that we paid for the design.
Yeah, this was,
But then- but then
and
we
this
got-
was an inherited project, so I picked up the piece of it.
Yeah, and so that was something that one of the previous commissioners took the lead on a lot of this stuff, and so when she left, it kind of, some of that institutional knowledge left along with it, so.
Are we, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Dave. if you
No,
go ahead.
no, go ahead. No, that's it.
So, Michael, I'm not familiar with RDG, and I'd like your opinion at some point now or in the near future about whether we're still happy with the quality of their services and the price that they're proposing for the additional services. You know, I came late to this party on wayfinding kiosks, but it seems to me that things really haven't gone very smoothly or very quickly.
Yeah, so what occurred is, I had worked with RDG, and Mike Hagler had worked with them on what information should be on the vehicular wayfinding signs. And then we kind of got we'd gone through those revisions. I'd had to make some corrections, coordinates they had and locations and things. A lot of locations we relocated due to snow plowing, because these are big signs that are going to be big targets. We didn't want them to get annihilated every year with the snow plowing. And then Brooke Kaufman, then a commissioner, she requested that I create a subcommittee and get some of the representation from the user groups for these signs. And we went through several iterations to change the signs to what the committee felt should be on there. And so that kind of backlogged it a little bit. RDG, I can work with them. Sometimes it's slow on communication back and forth. They're not local. I believe the reason they were chosen was because the MPO wayfinding sign plan, which was adopted, was done by RDG, so it kind of made sense. Let's do the same wayfinding signs for the mountain as the MPO was planning. I believe the city has shelved most of that at this time due to cost, and our wayfinding sign bid came in around, I think, $68,000 to do around 30 signs. They've got some custom laymen on them, and I'm not sure that, I think the material thickness was a little different than most signs, but they're large. They're a 5 foot by 6 foot sign. We did have restrictions on what we could put on there, like symbols for campground and things that didn't fall into the type and the capacity for the sign. So we were basically following what the MPO had done and trying to utilize that to the best as we could. But that's kind of where the length of this happened. And I put a notice out to bid. We received several bids. I had RDG review those with me to make sure they met the bid document requirements. The lowest bidder was in compliance with all those, and then I sent that to legal, and I never got anything back. And I tried to revisit it, and that didn't happen. It was still, could never get that to where we could get a proposed contract for those in front of the commission. And at this time, and even then, we were kind of planning on holding off on installing the signs along the main trunk because of the road construction that Road and Bridge is going to be doing next summer. We didn't want to install signs and then have to tear them down, but we were going to get them all built, and we were going to store them out in the Road and Bridge yard and put them up as that project completed.
So with the MPO shelving it and the road project and everything, would it behoove us maybe to shelve this for just a little while until the road project's completed and then the MPO decides to come on board again?
I agree with that on the vehicular wayfinding signs, and that's why I'm talking with Visit Casper, because they've mentioned that they'd like to get vehicular wayfinding signs from David Street Station up to the mountain. So it makes sense to, if they do that, we kind of jump on board and do that for the vehicular signs. The kiosks fall under the LWCF grant, and I think we have until 25 to complete the construction of those. So the kiosks, they're a separate thing. They're a trailhead kiosk that provides information and have maps, and you can pick up a map there for the hiking and skiing trails and whatnot. So those are not in the way of the road project. And so with that grant, I thought I would bring this and present it and see where we wanted to go with the ad services.
Jim, I would add that the MPO hasn't really shelved it. I think the city determined that they could actually create those signs themselves a lot cheaper than what was being charged. And that's why that kind of came to a stop on that side of things.
Okay.
I also know they're in the same boat when you start talking about wayfinding signs coming in off I-25. They've got reconstruction going on Poplar, Center Street, and down to McKinley Street. So a lot of that stuff's on hold for then. personally, myself, we've got the road project going on, we've got the lodge that we're looking at doing. Obviously, we're not wanting to put these signs in until that road project's done, so I agree with you, not necessarily shelving it, but I think that we need to take all those projects and get everybody at the same table, and let's have a discussion of what's going first and how we're gonna, we just had this discussion yesterday on how are we gonna approach each one of these projects and what's gonna be A, what's gonna be B, and so forth.
Yeah, I don't have a problem putting on hold the wayfinding signs that are along the main trunk. I think that just makes sense. I think there is value in getting these kiosks up sooner rather than later. I don't like at all a $460,000 number, divide that by 2 with the LWCF, right?
Yeah.
And so it's $230,000 to the county. I'm not entirely comfortable with the additional fees that have been proposed by RDG, and I think you could maybe spend some time in the near future trying to dial that in a little bit, and then maybe we, have more discussions on the lodge and more discussions on the timing of the road construction, and then get back together here in a couple months. Maybe you can get a better number from RDG too, or something that explains what that value is.
Yeah, and just to clarify, the 460,000, that was put into the grant application. I believe there might have been a resolution committed in the commission to the half of that. It's not to exceed, so the grant's not to exceed 230,000. So depending on the bids, this may come in lower, but we won't know that till bid time. But yeah, so I'm good acquiring some more information and coming back with this.
Jared, I know you just got here, so not to put you on the spot, but what I would really like to see happen, because it seems like a few things have been falling through the cracks here lately, is when it comes to the kiosk wayfinding signs, can we gather everything that's been done on this contract-wise and do a legal review on it and see exactly what's covered, what's not covered? Today, we're talking about some add-ons here that, personally, looking at this contract, I think they're already covered in there anyways, but if we could just do an overall on this project and get a report back on what's been covered and what we don't have memorialized.
Yep, yes, we can do that.
Thank you. Anybody else with anything?
Let me know if you need some help on any of this stuff too, Michael.
Mr. Chairman, are the add-ons or the change orders?
Well, as soon as we have a legal review, we'll know. I don't know at this point, so.
Yeah, typically with the consultants, architects, engineers, they like to call them an ad service versus a contractor calls them a change order. Basically, they're the same thing in my mind, so. All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hey,
Okay, we'll move to the next item. Brian Connolly.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
I've introduced, can everybody hear me okay? I've been sitting all day. If you don't mind, I'm going to kind of pace and point and talk. I've introduced myself, informally to you folks just a bit ago. My name is Brian Connolly. I'm the supervisor at Natrona County Lead Pest. I've been there since 2001. Jason Gutierrez is our board chairman. We have a 7-person volunteer board. We are a special district statuted by the state of Wyoming to exist in all counties. Kind of what we wanted to do today, it's a tradition that we apprise the county commissioners of what went on last year, plans for this year, challenges, questions, etc. So who are we? We're mandated by the state statute to control state-designated, county-declared weeds and pests. We use an integrated weed management system. and practices. We treat all lands, so private, state, federal, county roads, et cetera. And so we're responsible. I just learned that we're actually, how many millions of acres are in Natrona County? Come on, you guys gotta know this, you're the county commissioner. 3.4. I had
I
that
know
wrong.
now. It's
Yeah, 3.4 million acres.
Know how many?
Main treatment season is May through September, but Russian olive salt cedar work is done in the winter. That is our limiting factor. We are adequately funded. Generally, we have adequate resources, people, but our limiting factor is that short growing season. 7 full-time employees and up to 27 seasonal employees historically. It looks like we're going to come in that 18 to 20 seasonal employees this year, and they're going to be both in the mosquito program and our right-of-way program and our backpack crew. So this is an example of how we track our work. We have a GPS app, ARC Online, and our pedestrian and roadside travels are tracked in that system. They show up as red lines. Next slide, please. And we see that there's both the red lines on the map and the gray areas. So in 2022, we protected about 175,000 acres grasshoppers in Natrona County in a RATS program. That means treating a swath, skipping a swath, reduced area application treatment system. And about 175,000 acres protected. You generally, on acreage that size, we have, we have a lot of support and funding through APHIS PPQ, right?
Absolutely crucial to the ranchers being able to raise livestock when we have these critical grasshopper years where they go in and totally decimate a piece of property.
And wildlife too.
What is, especially this year, what's a projection for grasshoppers, or do we have one? I mean, I know that's a loaded question.
We do have a projection, and that projection is developed by the APHIS PPQ and their adult counts in the fall. So last fall, they did a couple of hot spots maybe. Midwest area north of that light blue polygon there that you see on the right-hand side of the map. North of that, more along the county line, there was a hot spot, and there was a little hot spot up in that blob that we've got treated. So I think the projection for Natrona County is pretty good. Knock on wood, we have treated grasshoppers for the last 5 years, in different capacities. This was the largest program we've had in about 10 years. This is the area of Casper. Those red lines, we'll see in future slides, that they represent a lot of pedestrian travel. They look like just kind of a red blob, but when we zoom in, we can really see the kind of coverage we get. We see Casper Mountain. We see the Hat 6. You see there on the right-hand side of the county line, you see the Hat 6. Muddy Creek and Clear Fork of Muddy are large project areas for leafy spurge and thistle complex. And then on Casper Mountain, of course, we have a little bit of spurge, not much. We're getting pretty good control. Dalmatian toad flax, and of course Canada thistle, musk thistle, etc. Then we see down on the backside in the Bates Hole area, we've got some project areas in the back of the Bates Hole, and then various and sundry on the other side of 487, on the west side of 487. We see that we did all of that spider there. Well, I wish I had a yardstick. That spider that we see there bordered by 487 and 220, right here on the map, we treated all of the salt cedar in Bolton Creek. And if you don't think Bolton Creek is a long drainage, just walk it. Took us a few weeks to get down through there. This is a detail, and this is a detail of our leafy spurge project in rattlesnakes. And as you can see, if you zoom in, each one of those little snail trails, it represents someone with a 40-pound backpack walking very rough country. Our backpacks are calibrated to spray 6 to an acre. It takes us 6 backpacks to spray an acre, so there's a lot of sweat equity there. You may wonder, well, why don't you just spray it with a four-wheeler, a big truck, or an airplane, et cetera. But in the last 40 years or so of doing this work, we have found that we get very good control by spot treating each individual weed. We conserve the native plant community around it, and we can get to all of the weeds, right? You have to walk them down. There's many places that you can't get any type of vehicle to. Yes?
Brian, have you guys sprayed anywhere in that Ponderosa Park, down East End Road, down in that area in the past?
We have, and that was part of our that whole east end of the Casper Mountain is part of our leafy spurge and Dalmatian toadflax, two very easily spreading species. There's a lot of Canada thistle there now. Access has been a bit of an issue.
It's a little better now.
Not last year, but year before, just with the fire and.
Yeah, it's better now, but I know there is a lot of thistle.
There is a lot of Canada thistle in that.
Down in that area.
Anytime you open up that canopy, anytime you have a disturbance, fire, logging, whatever, it just seems to generate itself. Yes. So these are some numbers from last year in acres, state and federal right-of-ways, 82 acres, 106 man-hours, county roads. We did all of them. I did not have the data on, we do all the county roads. BLM did 96 acres. And again, when we're looking at those acreages, remember to multiply by 6 for number of backpacks. 567 man-hours, state, 60 acres at 242 man-hours, private, 502 acres at 786 man-hours. We do private lands, generally large ranches. With that checkerboard, not checkerboard, but multi land management that we have here in the county, weeds don't stop at management lines, right? So we just follow the weeds. Sometimes we're spraying on private, sometimes we're spraying on state, federal. Next slide, please. Part of our program is biocontrol agents. These are naturally natural insect predators generally on some of the noxious weed species. We've got about 14 biocontrol agents in the county on about 9 species of weeds, and we have some real success stories in that program. Macinus gianthenis is a biocontrol on Dalmatian toadflax, and there's a lot of Dalmatian toadflax down, or was, in the Casper well field. We cannot treat there with herbicides for obvious reasons. It is our drinking water area. So we've been doing multiple releases of Macinus, and that has really controlled the Dalmatian toadflax down there. We have gotten musk thistle bugs on the musk thistle that came in after the fire, Casper Mountain, and leafy spurge bugs are starting to establish themselves, show really good results up on Casper Mountain and other areas. Next slide, please.
Hey, Brian, right along with that.
Yes.
If you've got, just for the general public, if you've got a map of where you guys have actually implemented the biological controls so that people don't go in there and spray them and kill them, well, I mean,
Sure.
it's kind of productive.
And you know, that-
when you go in
that's
there and
a-
have something, and then
Right.
people look at it as a bug that they don't want
Right.
and don't realize the beneficial use of it.
We do not, we generally do not do those are called insectaries. So insectaries are where you put biocontrol agents, and then you conserve them and do not treat them. We don't operate that way. We put them out there. They've got to survive the spraying. They are another element in our program. Sure. And it's like a fist fight, just keep using everything you can. And so we do have maps to answer your question. We are sometimes a bit reluctant to give those out. They're kind of valuable. Some of these biocontrolling agents, most of them are about $1 a bug.
Yeah.
And it's a $100 or 100 bugs per release,
Right.
et cetera. And up in Montana, they got a lot of what they call bug wrangling, you know, those people get up there and sweet
Well,
bugs.
I was just thinking, because you know, we have every year, well, not every year, but close to it, during the fall, we have an infestation of box elder bugs, you know, in the spring. I'm just, you know.
Sure,
people
and
see
trying to
something-
protect that.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying is
Sure.
that I'm not necessarily saying that we want to give out what you're using, but
Right,
But-
and we do monitor those populations for any threats to the population. If someone were to come, like a big ag operation, and they were going to do some aerial treatment, we need to monitor that, our biocontrol release sites, and also, of course, bees. And we coordinate that with private landowners when they're spraying their fields, et cetera, for weevils or some other pests. We coordinate the beekeeping on those. We've got a weed bounty program that's worked real well up on Rotary Park. Rotary Park, as you know, has got a bunch of common burdock and houndstone in Rotary Park. And could we go up there and treat that riparian area with all the cottonwoods, chokecherries, et cetera, water birch, et cetera? Could we treat that with herbicides to try to start to get control of that burdock and houndstone? Absolutely, we could. But it looked like a bomb went off. It's just so tight in that riparian community, all those trees, that and we still have burdock and houndstone next year. We just have dead trees. So we instituted this weed bounty program. It's going very well. We pay 50 cents a pound for common burdock houndstone from the Rotary Park area. Civic groups, et cetera, go up, make some money for their group, et cetera, and it's starting to show some good effect. Next slide, please. So 2023, what are our plans? We've got changed this number. Some more acreage came in, about 12,400 acres of cheatgrass that we'll be treating this year with Imasapic Plateau branded. Development project to control salt, cedar, and South Fork of the Powder River with aerial helicopter in conjunction with the BLM. They are going to fund that. They're going to fund that project. Utilize drone. We've got a drone now, just a camera drone. Don't worry, it's not dropping or spraying anything. Utilize a drone to monitor treatments. Excited about that. It's going to save time, money, and it's going to be a great monitoring tool. And build on crop collaborations. So we started this group, we call it CRAP, kind of tongue-in-cheek. It's a Cheatgrass Restoration Action Plan. And for a long time, you had different agencies doing cheatgrass control. You had Game Fish, you had BLM, you had us. And it was uncoordinated. Everybody did their own thing. There were no goals, priorities, et cetera, set. And so we're going to, we started this, we'll probably name it something else, but we thought that was kind of funny. We started this coordinating group, and it's really grown some legs. And we are now coordinating all projects. We have data collection, monitoring protocol, so it'll all look the same. We can share it. We can, and especially in that planning phase, what are we going to do, and why are we going to do it? Why are we going to treat here and not there? So everybody gets to bring their wants to the table and have a coordinated approach. Continue to find our seasonal crew recruitment and retention. That was a problem last year. I know a lot of people had problems with recruiting labor for whatever, but especially seasonal labor. This year we're really off to a good start. I think we've got more applicants than jobs this year, and it looks like a good bunch. Pardon me? 16. $16 an hour, time and a half overtime, and we give our backpack crews that camp out Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday nights out in the remote areas to mitigate commute time, et cetera, be right on the job site when they're ready to go. We pay them a per diem to buy their groceries, et cetera. And so it's we're paying them $16 an hour, and on a lot of days they earn 20, to be honest with you. It is hard work, and we're really proud of those crews. And we're going to continue to do what we do well and have for a long time, is control weeds and pests in the county. Again, Jason, I don't think we need anything except a long growing season and, rain on the weekends only.
Brian, we might give him a fill-in real quick on services we provide to Natrona County landowners that live in rural Natrona County.
Oh,
You know, they
excellent.
come
Yeah,
in,
yeah.
they say, hey, I've got a problem with bats, or I have a problem with
Sure.
Canadian thistle.
So, in conjunction with actually treating weeds, pests, et cetera, we also provide expertise, consultation, and sales of herbicides, pesticides to Natrona County landowners. We give them a cost share if they have those, weeds we worry about, state designated, county declared weeds. Give them a cost share on that. That really helps jumpstart control on a lot of private land issues, to do it right the first time, and have someone maybe come out to your place and look it over, give you a good written weed management plan, kind of a recipe book, calendar, et cetera. It really helps jumpstart these programs. And it's pretty darn easy to control noxious weeds in Natrona County.
Yeah.
And what else, Jason? Help me out here, brother.
What did you say your total number of employees, full-time employees?
7, shooting for about 20 seasonals. Those seasonals on the backpack crew cover about how many miles a day, Brian?
8 to 15. 15.8 was the longest. We track ourselves. Pardon me?
Walking the whole time?
Yes, and that is just walking,
Yeah.
right? And with a 40-pound pack and in 101-degree heat, and bugs and winds and snakes and whatever, just being outside. And that's why we recruit college students.
I was going to say, it sounded like a college student.
It does. It is a kind of a young
It's just
person's
an
game.
amazing resource for an ag producer or an Natrona County resident. It's just an amazing resource to be able to control the noxious weeds on your property or pests. And these guys do a wonderful job helping those residents.
Just a quick note, Wyoming has arguably the best invasive species control program in the United States. And it's not an accident. The Weed and Pest Law of 1973 was one of the earliest ones in the nation, and it was funded, not just an unfunded mandate, not just a thou shalt, but they put in that mill levy possibility for all the counties to take advantage of. So,
Brian, you've done a great job with private landowners. You and your office and our ranch has taken advantage of some of these cost shares. Do you feel like you're getting enough of your message out there to landowners that they know that the sprayers and the product and the training that's available? I mean, how do you feel about your
Outreach.
PR outreach?
Sure,
Yeah.
the outreach and PR. Sure, Peter. That is largely, believe it or not, maybe I'm just a dinosaur, that's largely word of mouth, especially in the ag community, as you know. That word gets out quite a bit. And also, we are directed, phone calls are directed to us from Ag Extension, from even some of the big box stores, et cetera. I think we've got pretty good coverage of rural residents, right? And maybe some of those holes are some of the subdivisions, et cetera. One of the things we do is subdivisions, is we have these spray days. Go out on Saturday, the subdivision organizes themselves, and everybody comes, and we show them the problem, or ask them the problems they're dealing with, and they use some of our rental equipment under supervision for that Saturday, and then they all know about that.
It surely wouldn't hurt. We have advertising dollars. We could put an ad in Livestock Roundup and
Oh, yeah.
kind of bullet point our services that we provide and give a contact information and put that out there to also.
Isn't that hard to?
Tractor Supply or Murdoch's, you know, you
Yeah.
put it up on their boards.
Sure.
Yeah.
We invest, that's a great idea. Don't you find it more difficult? I do, to get that work. Where do you put it out? Oh, social media. Put it out on social media. Which one? And, you know, who's gonna, we struggle in getting the word out, like for seasonal jobs, right? It
So-
used to be, you put it in the Casper Star Tribune, boom, it was done.
City could do it.
Yeah, and
Actually,
now
people
it's,
watch.
who's
Yep.
looking at that? Where are the kids' eyes? I don't know.
So you're talking about getting information out and whatnot. I know
Yeah.
Scott used to coordinate with you guys and Extension, all,
Yeah.
all that stuff. And, well, Scott's a missing component now a little bit. Have you been working with Jody and everybody else? And
We have, Ann Cormican,
yeah,
yes, and we co-teach the private pesticide applicators license course, and we get referred all things weed and pest from, as Jason was, bats in the belfry to, I don't know, cats in the shed. We seem like we get all of the weed and pest.
and it's not just the chemicals too, as far as chemicals or bugs or anything like that, but we've used the trailer sprayer from you guys and stuff like that. So there's actually equipment that's available too.
Absolutely.
We even have a goat head collector now that's out
Oh,
for
yeah.
rent. A non-chemical,
blower.
it's a non-chemical approach if folks are anti-chemical to control goat heads. And you push this and it's supposed to collect the.
Just a gunny sack, ain't it?
Kinda.
It's got and it's got a little hopper that collects the seeds. Goat heads are a big problem. Real quickly, some of the municipalities, Evansville, Mills, Barna, have all got sandy soils, and goat heads are a real problem. We're trying to help them out with that. We'd like those municipalities to start their own spray program. With 3.4 million acres, we don't have the time to go through the alleys in Mills and Evansville, bar none, and do some of that work. Goat heads can be a very large and spreading problem. But we do sell to those non-incorporated municipalities and sell pendimethalin, which is a pre-emergent you put down. It's yellow, and it keeps goat heads from coming up all season long. So we hope that using pendimethalin, controlling goat heads every time you see them, that we're going to get slow control. But the goat heads are a tough one.
Yeah. With so many new subdivisions that are ranchettes, I'm not quite sure what the best route would be to reach those people, but we have a lot of them that are coming in from out of state and other places, and so that may be something we look at as far as reaching out to those guys? Because there are a lot of them.
There are,
And-
and oftentimes they do the ag extension, that's their first call.
Yep.
Hey, knew the land, knew the state, whatever. I want to grow palm trees and sod grass through this whole place. So they call the extension. The extension refers them to us. We go out and do a consultation, discover their goals, what do you want out of this place? Are your goals reasonable? And then give them yeah, it's tough, right, to get all of the homeowners, get the list, right,
Yeah,
get the
well,
goal list.
Maybe work with Cade. I mean, they've got all those people listed as far as a lot of the ones that are irrigated acres and stuff like that. That might be.
Cade's one of the biggest weed spreaders around.
And we actually are working,
I'm just
we're actually
talking about-
working with Cade now to control some weeds.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
just talking about knowing who the landowners are so that you can reach out to some of those new ones, because they'll have a list every year.
The subdivisions are a tough nut to crack.
Yeah.
We use the example of Cattle Trail Acres west of town. That was a give or take an 80-acre subdivision. It was prime alfalfa for many decades.
Yep.
It got chopped up, turned into a subdivision. Instantly, then we had 80 acres of cheatgrass. I think that was last summer, maybe the summer before. We had a fire, and we had to expend great dollars to airily suppress that fire. And I think there's real opportunities there where we could go in and try to educate those folks and treat that cheatgrass ahead of time, take away some of those fuels, and ultimately save some dollars in the future. So the board is aware of that, and we're trying to focus on those opportunities and where we can focus in on these subdivisions and help take away some of those risks and those burdens on county services.
I was just thinking that might be something that would be a real easy thing to do, because a lot of those people that move out there,
They just don't know.
it's not a matter that they don't want to do the right thing, they just don't know how
Oh,
to
by the way,
do the
we've
right
treated 118,000 acres, not all individual acres, but 118,000 acres for cheatgrass. Not one of those, since 2011, not one of those acres has burned yet.
Jason,
Well,
is Wheaton Pest consulted on or notified of new subdivision applications?
Not directly. I'm on the planning and zoning board, so I'm able to get some of that information through. I know Weed and Pest, from my planning times and even the new planners, large-scale projects that come through like the wind farm, the solar farm, all those are required to interact with Brian and get a weed control program. But absolutely, we could work with Christie and get on a mailer and
What I'd like to see
get
is
comments back.
if you had a brochure or a manual to put over in her office when somebody comes in with an application, then they just pick that up and then they.
good idea.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Any other questions? Let you get back to the fun stuff.
Be seeing you later this week to pick up some stuff.
Okay. We got it.
Thank you. I
Thank
appreciate
you,
it.
Commissioners?
You're working with Helen?
Tom Jones brought the statue.
Okay.
Yeah, so, get bigger.
Okay, we will now call up Helen Wolf in Central Wyoming Fairgrounds.
Andrew statue.
Tom statue. Yeah, Tom Clayton statue.
Where do you want us to be?
You're right up here at the table if you want.
Oh, at the table. You guys sit there, I'll sit right there. You come up to the table. We're all in this together. Well, get me started, I'm outspoken. You guys sit back there.
You're fine, I'll just stand.
I'll stand you.
Good afternoon.
Pardon?
I said good afternoon.
Good afternoon. It's nice seeing you.
Good seeing you.
Oh, that's right, this thing. I've got a loud voice. Go ahead.
I'm gonna get a picture.
Want me to put my hands on that? Or just not?
Get it over. Yeah, good idea.
Big smile. Very low.
Should have had that in front too.
That's really nice, Helen.
Thank you. Okay, ask whatever you want to ask. I'll be happy to answer the question.
Do you want to tell us about it?
You bet.
Okay?
Okay. I grew up on a ranch 6 miles south of Lander. It's not there anymore. It was sold after my father died, and then the land was sold again, but nothing happened. All the buildings were gone. I guess it was the county commissioners that okayed to split up the lots, and not the mileage or the acreages or whatever you want to call it. So the ranch itself is not there. The land's there. And when I was a little girl, we drove for water. We had ditches and water rights and ponds. We had everything when I grew up on the ranch. That's how we watered, the old-fashioned way. And then after my father died and it got split up, then that all went away. And so there's really nothing there anymore. And anyway, I decided, we had no children. I taught school for 35 years. And a lot of my students were in 4-H and later on in FFA. So I decided my money would go down to the fairgrounds because I was in 4-H too when I was growing up. And my horse and my lamb, was my project when I was in 4-H. And so this particular horse was done by Chris Navarro, the bronze. I asked him, I called Tom, our main man at the fairgrounds, and I said, I want to do a statue. Do you want it at your fairgrounds? And, well, of course. So I said, okay. I didn't contact any of you. I just okayed it with him and said, here I am. I'm going to pay for this thing. With Chris Navarro, I was going to make it. So I told Chris what I wanted, and he designed it. And it tells a story. A horse is looking at the little girl, and you do all this down at the fairgrounds. You have everything down there. The horse is looking at the little girl saying, put me down, put the lamb down. I'm important here too. I wear many halters. I could be a racehorse. We used to have racehorses down there too. We had racehorses, my husband and I did, and won a lot of races with the Diamond Classic. I could be a show horse, a barrel horse, and you better be trained for that, barrel horse. Cowboy horse, a ronk, your best friend, a therapy horse, or I could take off my halter and I could be a wild Mustang showing off for the tourists. So anyway, this is what I want. When I was growing up, I grew up in Lander, and I have a Native American name given to me by Sheila Washke, and it's called Red Rose. And when I was a little girl, I was holding my sheep, and Sheila came up to me, Sheila Washke, an heir of Chief Washke, came up to me and said, Helen, I'm going to give you something. Here's a red rose. And I'm probably going to cry through part of this. It stands for honesty, kindness, and love. And that's what you are, Helen. And I said, thank you, Sheila. And then I've been wearing this all my life. I've had this ever since I was 12 years old. She made it for me. And what I would like in front of this, the county commissioners can do it, somewhere, if you build a place like a flower garden, I would like to have some red roses in front and one yellow rose, because my sister-in-law also spent a lot of time at the fairgrounds. She's now deceased too, my brother's wife, and they're from Cody. My maiden name was Fasanelli, Italian, and I'd like one yellow rose put in between because she was in charge of all the queens and the fair queens and rodeo queens throughout the state for many, many years. And she spent a lot of time down here at the fairgrounds. And so did my husband and I. We did too. But anyway, I grew up in Lander, and people were really nice there. My teachers were wonderful. I don't know if any of you know too many people in Lander, but Bush was our coach, and he always said, stand up for what you believe, Helen. The sky's the limit. The sky's the limit. You can do whatever you want. And Mr. King, Jack King, was our superintendent of schools, and he always said, be a leader, don't be a follower. And he's still in Lander. He's in his late 90s now. But anyway, so that's what I would like, and I understand that Chris Navarro would like it done in August. It won't be finished until August. So if you could put it in on a Sunday, like, I brought my calendar just in case, that's your thing. I have this, you're in charge. It could be on a Sunday, that way, a lot of people could be there for this. A lot of people don't work on Sunday, and there's hundreds of people that want to come to this, hundreds. And somebody said, wouldn't it be nice if Kevin Cosner could be here for this? And I said, I think that'd be great, but I don't know how to get a hold of him. Here's my idea, if he comes to this and he could be here for the unveiling of the big one, then maybe he might come to Casper and maybe do one of his Yellowstone series right down there at the fairgrounds. That's a thought. That would be wonderful with the kids and the animals and the whole bit. I'm all for that. But I've got even bigger goals. I would like to see Peter Fasinelli come for this too, if I could get a hold of him. He's a relative from Mervaux. His family's all related. And he's the Twilight guy, the vampire. I wish he'd come because he's a movie producer and a script writer and everything else. And if he'd show up, that would be great too. But I would like to see in the future a real movie made right out here at this fairgrounds. We've had companies from Hollywood come in here and they film movies everywhere. The Bug Bunch up by the rocks up there, I met some of them when they were here, and I think, what's his name was here too. We've had several movies in Wyoming, but nothing out at the fairgrounds. I'll tell you, they could film a movie out there about the people in Casper, all the wonderful people, the good, kind people, and we need more kindness in our world than we have right now, believe me. And it might make an Academy Award, be nominated for Academy Award, and by God, we could have an Academy Award-winning movie right out here at this fairgrounds. Now, that's my goal. Now, maybe I'm sounding like I'm clear up here on cloud 9, but believe me, knowing the right people, you could have it. And there's some people that I'll mention the name. I won't mention their last names because I don't have permission. But there's a Willie in Lander who's Native American, and there's a Jim in Casper who's Native American who knows a lot about hoop dancing. And Willie, some of you already know him, in Lander has done a lot of work, done a lot of talks, goes around all around the country. He'd be good for the script to help write a script. But I'll tell you, that could be a movie to die for. And Dances with Wolves has always been my favorite, and it always will be my favorite. And I think probably the most best part of the movie was at the end. Somebody had shot the wolf and thought they killed it just for kicks, just to be mean, and the wolf pops up at the top. Do you remember that? And looks around and say, I'm here. I'm here in peace and love and kindness. Now that's what I have to say. If you want to ask me some questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Anybody have any questions?
You must have. What?
I really appreciate what you're doing.
Well, thank you. I know people have called me from all over and have said, my God, what a wonderful thing to do. My husband would be so proud of me, and my parents would be very proud of me. And my mom and dad always said, Helen, when I was just a little girl, I was just a little ranch girl, poor little ranch girl, you'll never be rich in money probably, but your riches will be in all of the wonderful people that you will meet throughout your life. And a lot of those were my students too. A lot of them. There's some right here. I just saw some downstairs just a few minutes ago. What are you doing here? Well, I'm here about a statue. Okay. Well, now I'd like to ask you guys when you would like to have this in August. What date? So and maybe you could put it on the news media too. What date you're going to have it so everybody could show up down there at the fairgrounds. And I'm not really sure where it's going to be. I drove in and I looked to the right side, but all I see is a fence, but I'm not sure where this is going to be. Where is it going to be? Could somebody tell me on that one? I looked the other day. Where is it?
We looked at putting it at the front entrance, but I think there might be better places for it.
Oh,
So, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, it seems like we were talking about the front entrance, the board was. Thank you for coming, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Helen, for doing this. It was great talking to you. I'm glad to see you came in.
Thank you.
And we're getting to that point where we can do something. But correct me if I'm wrong, but we used to constantly take calls and you constantly had to fix that front gate. And we were listening to the Fair Board and everybody talk about putting it at the front. I'm personally really concerned about the sculpture, its well-being, whether somebody wouldn't hit it.
Oh, you mean out before you get in?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a good place to put it. Somebody's
Or-
going to
or
go
even
to damage it too.
The Hall of Justice just got vandalized. I can see people doing stupid stuff like that.
Right inside.
So what I was kind of wondering, we're a really good place, and this is up to the board and y'all and everything, but right in front, the industrial building just had that whole new facelift. And there's that huge cement portion in front with the flags are there. That, to me, that would be an amazing space, put that sculpture is right in front of there. People would be walking by it, they could enjoy it, they could appreciate
Whatever you
it.
think. I'm just paying for the statue. You're the ones that need to know where to put it.
Well, I think we need a little buy-in from you as to
Well,
where.
but I definitely, well, whatever you think, but I definitely want the flowers in front.
Oh.
Now, I'm going to also suggest too that somebody donate a water feature sometime. Boy, that would really be beautiful someplace. A beautiful, not a huge, massive thing, but a beautiful water feature coming down in the summertime. Wouldn't that be beautiful? I'm into beauty.
If that's put it in front of the industrial building in the center, which I agree is probably the best place to put it. There's more people that go around it right there, but we also have flower beds.
You got a flower bed there, yeah.
We can also put a water feature in there. It's a whole lot easier. We have access to everything. So I think you're right. Probably the best place to put it is in front of the industrial building, and it will be safer.
And whatever you think, you're the ones that work down there. I don't want somebody to come in, and I told Chris, he said, oh, somebody comes in and damages that, I think I'm going to strangle him. I said, no, you won't have to, I will. So, and some of you here know who I am, you know I'm pretty outspoken.
Will
But-
you be able to get flowers in front of it, down in front of the industrial building?
The
Potential water feature if that's.
Yeah.
well, somebody might
Mr. Chairman.
donate that, but red roses is what I want, because this is what I am. This is Sheila's thing.
We can incorporate the flower bed into the stand that's built.
Yeah, you can, and with one yellow rose for my sister-in-law. So her footprints, this is all about everybody's footprints. We're gonna have a lot of footprints here when we get done. And everybody's coming to look for their footprints. Everybody.
Okay. Members, this county, people of this county have spent and spent to make that fairgrounds
Beautiful.
wonderful. And they've put the front on that industrial building. It complements the all events building that we have currently. We're putting new asphalt down. That people of this county, through the commissioners, have spent. This is the capstone, honestly, of those efforts. This will really top off that fairgrounds.
Yeah.
And as a board, as a fair board, I just want to say thank you
You're
very much. We like Cloud 9, by the way.
Well,
Thank you very much, because this puts us on Cloud 9.
what do you think about a real movie coming in here? Wouldn't you all flip if that happened? You could all be in it, all of you people be there acting up. And I'm really, Coach Bush and Coach Bush always said, Helen, I was always a big mouth in school too, when I was a kid, but he said, you're always thinking for the best. Go for the Cloud 9. Well, that's what I'm doing, and hey, this could happen. I might not be around. I'm pretty old right now, and I probably won't be around, but you will, and you say, oh my God, that old lady might be right. So, that's what I
So-
think. I think we could really do something great down there, and that is a beautiful fairgrounds, and it's well-run by these people back right behind me, let me tell you.
The
So-
biggest thing is gonna be the base for that.
Well, that's up to you.
Because we don't have the money in our budget to build a base to put that
Well,
on, but
You come up with it.
That'll be
I've
it.
already
Would-
put my 250 in it.
Thank you.
You've gotten
Thank you for doing this.
bids on.
Now, when,
on the
let me
base
know for
out
sure when it's
front.
gonna be, when it's gonna be, unveiled, they're going to get it.
Oh, we would, we definitely will.
Yeah, please let me know so we can let everybody else know too, because I don't want to be the only one standing down there with, nobody knew anything,
No,
so.
you got the
Get on the
press
news
right
media.
there.
We'll go through our calendar.
Oh, the press is here?
Get a Sunday.
Did you hear everything I said? Oh, my God, that's not going to be on TV, is it, I hope?
So, do we need to get a new RFP for a new bid out
Oh, good.
if we're moving that base to the
Oh, I've been
front?
on TV so many times, it's unreal.
Just have Greg come down and re-put it. We already ordered him the low bid on it, so we'll just have him move it over there
Okay.
and just incorporate flower bed on it.
This thing weighs a
And it'll
ton.
be cheaper than it was up there. We don't have to do the
I'm gonna meet her this
Well,
morning.
Helen,
Yeah.
we're gonna coordinate to find a date in August that we can make this happen on a Sunday. And it looks like going down your list, we pretty much checked off everything except for Kevin Cosner, and so I'm gonna have Jim.
Oh, hey, can somebody get a hold of him? I can't get a hold of him, and I can't get a hold of my Rowley, the Fasinelli either. He's probably out Neverland, but if they're here on vacation,
We'll put it down for
get
that
him down
Sunday.
here, get him down here.
All right. Well,
Helen,
thank you.
excuse me, Mr. Chairman, how many children do you think you've taught in Casper?
I was in Du Bois for 3 years, had tons of them in Du Bois, and then I went to Jackson for 1 year, loved Jackson, and I talked to some of them are still in Casper, that have lived in Casper. There were a lot in Du Bois. I think Nethercott's dad was one of them. She ran for office. I think her dad was one of my students. The boys took my class too. More boys were in my class than girls, and they were a lot better in the home ec department than the girls were. Just, man, they were really jealous of the boys. And then in Jeffrey City, there were a lot of students in Jeffrey City. And then in Casper, there were tons. Back here's one.
What'd you teach?
I taught home economics, but it wasn't just cooking, it was everything. When it come time for the ninth graders to drive a car, we had guest speakers and talked about driving a car properly and not doing things to get in trouble. We did a lot of things, money management, everything, decorations, everything. Interior decorating, we did everything. And I originally wasn't going to be a teacher. I was going to be a dress designer, but I made a few trips to Italy, and I thought, forget that, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be a teacher, so I stayed a teacher.
Well, thank you,
I made a lot of
thank you
trips.
very much.
You're welcome.
The whole county thanks you.
Well,
Thank you,
Thank you.
Helen.
and I want to go around and make sure I know all these guys, too. I knew this aunt of this gentleman over here.
Make sure we've got a
She was a
Sunday,
good
we
friend.
don't have any events scheduled
Right.
in August.
I'm gonna Make sure I know all you guys. Just a minute, don't leave yet. Okay, so you're here.
Yep, how are you doing?
Oh, yes, I've heard a lot of nice things about you.
Very nice to meet you. Thanks so much. Oh, yeah.
You want her in this chair?
And I know this
What do you want?
nice guy.
Okay, we get her over here.
I met you too, and I know this guy real well. He's a good guy.
You want a better picture?
This is a wonderful group of
You
people.
come
and
up,
keep up
if
the
you want to
good
get a
work.
better picture of
Would you sit down?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was hoping to get a picture of them with
Yeah.
the statue.
Trying to show
Well, get somebody else in here with me.
No, you just
Where's
sit-
Tom?
Sit right here.
Oh,
Yeah, we
jeez.
want you on the soft chair. Here, you need that white. You gotta get that out of here.
That here.
It's going.
Hey, Dickens.
This is my shooter.
Hey, Pete, can you scoot over just a little bit?
Yeah, look at me.
Another one.
Sorry.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, did I sound okay when I was sounding off?
Oh, man.
Well, you should have been in my class, you would have known.
No doubt I could.
We had a great time.
Tom, how you doing?
I'm good, sir.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank
That
you.
means I'm ready to go home, right? Good luck, guys, and
Thank you.
I'll see you maybe before it gets put down at the fairground, and we're gonna have music, don't forget to have some music down there, Western music.
She paid 250 grand out of her own stash.
Okay, nice seeing you, nice seeing you. Well, this is fun. Nice meeting you.
Anybody need a 5-minute break here, you good to go with the next one?
Going. Might as well keep going.
I agree.
We're a little early, but,
We only got 2 more.
so
What's Tom's last name, director of fairgrounds?
Tom Jones.
Yeah, you know Pete Griner.
Remember his Senior Plus?
Yeah. Did you know Pete Griner?
Yeah.
God, he's aged. He's always a good friend of mine, but he looks like he's 90 years old. He was the chairman of the fair board last year.
No, I know Pete.
And Gary
Sam
Lathrop, I've known him
Scalen's
since.
is a good friend of mine, too.
Gary Lathrop, I was in high school with. Gary Lathrop, I was in high school with.
I haven't seen Gary in a long time.
Tom, thanks for helping her with all this.
Thank you guys, appreciate all.
Yeah.
The only thing.
Okay, we'll move on to the next item agenda, and it is the Natrona County Public Library. So Lisa?
Did you ever go get your picture taken?
Terry, how are you?
Have a-
Yeah.
Did you bring a cameraman so you could get all of our pictures?
I hear there's going to be one here in August. That's nice, that's wireless. Very handy. Hi.
Good afternoon.
Thank you so much for fitting me into your incredibly busy schedule. I appreciate it. I know you've got a lot on your plates, but I just felt like it was a great opportunity for me to come and have a visit with you, since we have some new commissioners, about the ongoing need for a new library facility. I've got several people here with me today, some of my library board, some of library key staff and administration, and then I have John here from the Library Foundation. He is the current president. So you know, in 2013, MOA did a needs assessment or a facility assessment of the library. I have one copy. It's precious to me. I can send, if you're interested in seeing in 2013 where the library facility stood, I can gladly send you a copy of this report. But at that time, here's just a key piece of information that I'd like to kick off our discussion with. So in 2013, which as we know is 10 years ago, this building that we're currently in scored a 63.51% in its condition report by MOA Architecture. And narratively, what they said was, this building is in crisis failure classification. So I think that's an important way to kick off our discussion. So in those 10 years, our building has continued, of course, to age. It's 10 years older, while we have been able to address some of the situations in the building itself. The actual facility is simply outdated and not productive to what we're trying to accomplish at the library. In addition to that, it is incredibly small. for the services that we provide. And to that point, I would just share with you that our statistics, our average statistics for the monthly foot traffic in the library, and I'd pull it up because I would get the wrong number. I don't want to give you misinformation. Let's see, where did I put that? So the average monthly visits at the library this fiscal year through the end of February is 24,083 people. So that's a lot of people that are coming through the public library. In fact, I would go so far as to suggest that outside of the event center, when it is holding maybe a big concert or CNFR, or an event such as that, and outside our school districts and maybe even big box stores like Walmart, I would say that we are the most visited facility in this community, and as a department of the county, we are the most forward-facing department representing the county on a day-to-day basis. And so that is, almost, it's 24,083, so it's almost 25,000 of your constituents come into the library every month. Year-to-date, we've had almost 200,000 people in the library, just to put it in context. That's a lot of people. And when they're there, they're doing a lot of different things. But they are circulating materials. We have materials that, of course, you help fund, right? And they circulate, which means to check those out. And so of the 2483 people that are coming in, on the average, we circulate 44,000 items out of the library. So we are doing and meeting the needs of this community in a tremendous way. But there are a lot of needs that we are unable to meet simply because of the design of the building. And I just want to bring that to your attention. And so we lack things like appropriate meeting spaces. We lack things like ADA accessibility. And I know that some of those things are grandfathered in as a building of a certain age and as part of the government. However, even when it's grandfathered in, not having ADA compliant access to all of our floors is challenging for your constituents and for our patrons. So I don't know if everybody that's sitting here in front of me today has had an opportunity to visit the library, but if you have not, I would encourage you to swing by. I would love to give you a tour of our facilities. But as we are looking to the very near future, we have an opportunity that I wanted to bring to your attention. And that opportunity is the federal government, a couple of years ago, I believe it was the U.S. Department of Treasury, initiated a grant funding, which was, I believe they called it the Capital Projects Fund. And every state received a certain amount, including Wyoming. And as happens whenever you're dealing with getting things structured, it sometimes takes a little time to get your grant writing done to where you can get it in place for people to apply. So I have on pretty good word from the state library that grant window will open this summer. And of the funding that the federal government provided, it looks like there will be about $12.6 million that is set aside for capital projects for public libraries. And so I see that as an opportunity for the county to apply for funding to kind of get the ball rolling on a new facility. That is not something I could do without a nod from this group, because of course it would be a federal grant which has different strings tied to it, and it's really out of my decision-making authority. But I would propose that I would be happy to move forward with, when the time is right, writing a grant for these funds. It would be competitive funds in the state of Wyoming, but I know that they don't have a lot of projects that currently meet the requirements of the grant as it's written from the U.S. Department of Treasury. If we chose to move forward with the new library construction, that would meet the requirements of this grant. But to that point, there's a lot of issues we need to address in the library that support the need for a new library, in addition to what was mentioned here, which includes life safety issues like I mentioned, the ADA compliance. We also have some other life safety issues. We have electrical issues. We have plumbing issues. We have HVAC that has exceeded its life expectancy already. And so I anticipate, when you start talking about air conditioning and heating, who knows? It's a kind of a roll of the dice how long that's going to last. It's been well maintained. It is lasting for now. But it has exceeded its life expectancy already by about 4 or 5 years. So we already know that the alarm system, and thank you for investing in updating the alarm system for the library. I know we're in the process of looking at the RFP and waiting for some bids to come in on that. But just to remind you, what I know that you already know, that's only half of the fire issue there. So the alarms and bells are one thing, and fire suppression is something totally different, and this is not addressing the need for fire suppression in our building. So there's a lot of things to address, and I think I would love to engage in conversations about new facility and what that would look like for Casper. The need is not going away based on the statistics I was sharing with you about numbers of people in the building and what they're checking out and what they're doing when they are there. Natrona County Library is a busy hub, and it continues to be busy. It continues to be used, and we really need to address the facility in which we're offering these services. To that, I do know that, John, if you have anything you would like to add as the foundation, not yet? Okay. So that's what I wanted to come and chat with you about. And do you have any questions for me about?
I actually have a question. Do we have a rough price tag on a new building?
So I love that you use the word rough, because any price tag right now would be really rough, right? Because prices have changed a lot through COVID with materials being availability, and that, of course, impacts pricing, and then the economy and the inflation has really hit hard. That being said, no, we don't have a price right now. I think what we would need is a discussion about what would a new facility look like, and then have a conversation, an updated conversation. It's been a while since we've had a conversation with somebody about pricing, and I think it would warrant a conversation to say, what are our needs, what is the space, and what is the current cost per square foot in the Rocky Mountain region, and specifically Wyoming, if we could narrow it down that far.
Chairman,
Dallas?
I have a couple questions.
Thanks for coming, too. I appreciate you all being here. What I hear from our community is they don't want to be taxed anymore. I think the people, at least that I know generally, I ask about a library, and many of them don't really understand the needs of the library or the numbers that you've given me today that I can use when I explain this. I'm personally in favor of a new library. The one thing I'm not in favor of is taxing the public. So the issue is how much money the commissioners have, and whether they're willing to spend it. But I think, hasn't the 6 cent been turned down twice, and the library has been turned down a couple times for funding?
Yes, sir. So I believe it was in 2008 and then again in 2012, the community was asked if they would like to fund a new library through the 6 cent, the 1 penny tax mechanism. And I believe that the community did speak by their votes and said that's not really the direction we want to go with as a mechanism to fund it. I would point out that both votes were very close. The second vote was much closer than the first, but, a no is a no, right? And so I hear what you're saying, and I also respect and appreciate individuals' concern about taxes, and I just think that, now would be a good time for us to enter some discussions about, are there some other creative ways, are there some things that we could look at that we haven't looked at in the past as a means to fund a library? I'm not here with the answers to say, and here's that magic avenue. I don't have that. I have been exploring some, just kind of thinking about, are there other ways to do this? And I think that collective wisdom and looking at community needs is a great way to start a conversation of, is there another way to approach this than we've approached it in the past? That's not to say that a six-penny is, in my book, off the table, but I do think there's creative ways to look at it where maybe we do find some mechanism that doesn't require that. All that being said, I think this is just a great time to say, let's start some discussions and see what collective wisdom can come up with.
So one of the things, too, that people say to me is they drive by the library and they don't see anything wrong with it. I mean, and they don't go in it, but when you drive by it, it's a very nice, presentable building. And so I think that it's a matter of getting your message out to the public, because I know you've tried very hard to do it, but I don't know that it's taken. I just keep hearing various things, because I don't think anybody's against the library, but when they drive by the building, it looks okay. Why can't we fix it up for, like they would do their home?
Right.
To keep things going. So I think that all of that has to be addressed, and you have to then get the public to slowly start changing their mind. Now, as far as money for a library, I wasn't on the commission that sold the hospital, but the commission got over $100 million that they have in the bank. And there's ideas that some of the commissioners just want to put that in a savings account. Personally, I'd like to see some of it used for something like a library, another infrastructure in the county that would benefit people now and in the future. Because I think it's time we take a better look at the future. Because right now what I see now is a lot of maintenance that needs to be done that's ongoing, that may have been overlooked for the past few years, just like your building. And so it takes looking ahead a few years, because I don't know, I wouldn't even know what to say to you about when could you start building a library or what it costs. Because I'm thinking the last number I heard, Mr. Chairman, was somewhere in the neighborhood of $60 million for a new library. And who knows what that number is today. Especially based upon the information we got with our Nordic Lodge, where we had an architect say it was going to be $2.3 million or something, and then the bids all came in over $1 million over that. And I see that almost in every project. So how do we pay for it? How big is it? Get an artist rendering of it, show it to the public, and then meet what they say in terms of how they would ever support something like that. Now, this is just me rambling on, but I've lived here my entire life. I haven't been in that library for a long time, but I used to be in it a lot over the years. I remember when the Russin statue was installed. I got to meet him. So when I drive by the building, I'm proud of our library. I don't like the people that hang around your door around back. I'd like to see that get solved somehow.
Mr. Chairman, Lisa, maybe you can speak to that issue and talk to us about some of the safety security issues that you've seen over the last couple of years.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And Commissioner Laird, thank you for your comments. And I would invite you to come and make a trip down to the library. I would love to show you around. And in that brief tour, if you will, I could point out, well, first of all, to your point about it looking good, so I will do a tip of the hat to my facilities staff that do an incredible job. That being said, with additions, add on here, one in the 50s, one in the 70s, and just the construction and the design of the facility lends itself towards creating a negative environment. So I hate to use the word hidey hole. That is like really not a very technical term. There's hidey holes everywhere. There are places where there is not a clear line of sight for staff, or we do have contracted security, for them to be able to observe what's going on. And that may be because of the design of the facility. Maybe the line of sight is here and there's over here and around back and coming around just because of the way the building was added on. So it creates these lack of line of sight. And then we have really tall bookshelves that also create a barrier for a line of sight. Both of those things have been mentioned to me by security professionals as an obstacle to providing a safe space. And so I'm very mindful of that. In fact, we had somebody in the library who is a national and I think international presenter about libraries, library dynamics, and library training, and he was in the library Friday. His name is Andrew Sanderbeck, and one of the first things he said was, I don't know how you people can even see what's going on. So if we're talking about safety and security, how can you see what's going on? So that is kind of a number one issue for us, is to have a facility where we have a clean line of sight. And I would add, when you have a clean line of sight, you're be able to utilize your staff in a much more efficient and better manner. And also, yes, to your point, Commissioner Laird, we do have some security issues outside the building, and sadly, even neighboring properties, some of their security issues are classified or perceived by the community as being library issues, when in fact they are not. But we're not passive about that. We do take an active approach to security at the library, point being, we do have contracted security, and my predecessor initiated that long before I got here, and now we're at a point where we need to step up our game. We need some additional security. We do have some individuals who maybe social norms and understanding and following social norms is a challenge for them, and then we just have some bad players, bad actors, if you will. That being said, we do work closely with CPD, and I'm proud of the changes we've made at the library when it comes to safety and security. But every day, the building itself is a challenge for us to provide safe space.
Mr. Chairman. Lisa, you talked about and held up this 2013 Facilities Assessment Report. I would ask if we could get, as commissioners, it may be at least one copy, color copy to Michelle, and then she can distribute either electronically or in paper format to the commissioners, so that Mr. Laird and I and our other commissioners have those talking points in front of us when we are trying to answer questions to some of our constituents. I think that'd be really helpful. Can you do that?
Yes, sir, Mr. Commissioner.
Then the other thing, I wanted to go back to this grant, the federal grant. You know, one of the things that occurred with some grant funding for the health department building was that it seemed like the goalposts kept moving over the course of the months, that maybe rules and regulations hadn't been quite fully developed. So I'll be interested to find out what strings will be attached to those federal funds. You know, some significant portion of $12.6 million or whatever, $12 million sounds great, but do you have to utilize it in this fashion and not in that fashion? So the more information I think we have, and the sooner we have it, the better. And finally, it just seems to me that we do need to have some back of the napkin kind of idea of what you and the foundation and we want and can afford, what's reasonable both now and what our needs are now and then into the future. So I look forward to having those discussions with you guys, but I think the ball has to be in your court, not our court, in order to, you know, at least get this ball rolling a little.
Yes, sir, and thank you for that. And just as a side note, but to that point, I've been visiting with Mr. Griffith at the foundation, and we are going to update our needs assessment. Several years ago, we had a consultant do a needs assessment for the library, and it's from that document and from those recommendations from a professional with a very unbiased and disinterested viewpoint, just what's happening in the nation, what are the standards, and what do we thinking about forward, looking forward into the future, what are our projected future needs. And it's from this needs assessment that we can really have some really earnest discussions about what a building like footprint would be, a square footage, and those kind of conversations. So I appreciate the generosity of the Library Foundation that is going to fund that needs assessment for us. And I believe that Mr. Dahlgren, who will be doing that, I've given him a really quick turnaround time, and I think that we'll probably have this at the beginning of June, or certainly early in June. I don't know the date yet, but it'll be early in June, and I think that will give us some of that information. And he is also a person who, when he does these needs assessment, he does do an assessment on what is the current going rate square footage in your region. So I think that's going to really help us in those discussions.
Well, I've asked a couple people if they thought we could get a library built during my term, which is 4 years. And I'm worried that it won't be done, because it seems like everything is going slowly, because this is a discussion I've heard for a few years now, and a few votes. And I don't know what it's going to take to really get the ball rolling, but I think Commissioner Nicolason says it's in here's the ball, it's in your court. You better get that ball in the air. I mean, really, because 4 years goes by in a heartbeat, truthfully.
It does, yes.
And, we're all mature adults. I'd like to say most of us aren't spring chickens. I know I'm not. So if we're going to do a new library, I'd sure like to see it.
I would too. I would like to see it during your term as well.
Anybody else? All right. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate all that you do.
Thank you.
They even brought the candy man over. Huh? The candy man, Donnell.
Mr. Whips, you're up next. Oh, okay, we can wait, we'll do a 5-minute break, and then. I want to put off the corner as long as I have to.
The sheets on your chair.
When, like, as of,
Or like a little while ago, like a week or so.
oh,
Like a week or so.
all right, I'll go look at that.
Okay.
I know, I haven't got that far. And I just was thinking of that, a private, government.
still wanting to stay downtown. Be a problem.
How much land do they have down there for the foundation?
They already, quite a bit, but I think they've got different ones.
I mean, because I do know we're performing RFPs, so they've been waiting for 20-some years.
Yeah.
And I think those two will go hand in hand. It's a thought.
Yeah.
I was just sitting there trying to.
Good.
Yeah.
Throw that idea out there,
Something else in there where it is, the county justice section went down twice. You got $12 million from the feds, no, from the state. And then we say so much
it took about 3 years to build, and then every year you go in and it's so much out of the budget. Not like that, something like that.
Don't you worry.
All of that was 27 million. We're talking about more money for it. Anyway, that's, after Performing Arts Center, the library kind of goes hand in hand. Something to think about.
Yeah, good idea.
How you doing? I got you. I know who you are. Don't have so. Yeah, I'm in charge of filming since, came back from the war. You have a card on you? I do. You want to,
Hello, Levi. Howdy, howdy. We're gonna be up here, I believe.
Well, you know, if you don't mind, I might give you this call in a couple of weeks. Sure. Okay, because I need speakers.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had one Sunday, I spoke, it must have been the line. Yeah. Because I've been there, just out of the meeting. I'll tell you, I had one back out on me the other day, it was last, on a Wednesday night, and I had family, but I got something. I feel like people calling somebody that evening, and just talk, you know, more than every day. You know, just talk general about what's due, everybody knows what's due. How was that? You know, one of the wreck out on the highway?
Yeah, it was nasty.
Should have chopped out that. What was it, 3? Were they young?
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't good. No, it was never good though. Okay, I'll give you a call.
Good, mate.
I'm Michelle.
Kim is out apparently on sort of medical leave out of town. So
Oh, I know.
just me and you.
Okay.
And I will send out all the goings on and all of that.
Guess you need some of those folks?
I'll lead the charge. How you doing, Michelle?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
I'd ask if you've been busy, but I know the answer.
6 days. It's probably the busiest month that we've had in years. This whole first quarter.
This year is like 2 years ago. Our average.
Yeah, well, actually, you had kind of a downturn on total investment, January 1st. Was that? No, it wasn't. They had this one, they had yesterday, which is Saturday. Should be able to bring the car back when my work. On a tow truck. That should be
Yeah. It's one of those situations where, you know, he's a father of them. It's not a real good lot of trouble. Yes. It's up to the highway patrol to make that final determination, but we can unwitness that accident, but it's about on vacation, it was father, son, and the crossing, you know. That was just one credit. Then I had.
And no, you did not have a...
Michelle.
Had said, no, you did not move.
Yep, yeah, that's what they do. I'm surprised when they did a procession from the town square out to us.
Okay, so I need and I need approval from the
Yeah,
commission.
they, we know about that. No, I saw it. I was scared where someone was starting something early, but I was sure on the radio, they're starting at 6 and
Probably going to run into go to NACO meeting, National Association of County Officials, and July.
Yeah, this is one of their own.
In where? Awesome. Yeah. It's, there's a lot of stuff that gets voted on. If you're not there.
It's not there. Yeah, that's why I said my top. That part's not in here. Yeah.
But I'm going to get hold of Terry Wolf and get some more information on that and let you know. So, because we'll have to approve that. Austin in July is not. I think that they could pick a better place to do it during the summertime. Can we set aside a portion of that communal property to do this? Since it's right adjacent to the current cemetery, to do what?
They may want this, just a copy of statute, so for later on, if they want to read it and see what this is all about. I've got copies, there's like 10 copies in there, so.
It's just one
Yep.
page each.
So they're all there?
Yep.
Perfect. I won't make,
Yeah, I'm talking about a small portion.
Six. Last week.
I don't know,
3 or 4 from the hospital.
newcomers having some problems here, I think. I don't know if it's because Kim's gone or what, but
It ebbs and
they're just,
It ebbs and flows, you know.
seems understaffed and not able to handle it, so.
That's kind of their model. They try to run really lean.
I wiped you all out.
That's okay. That's okay, just in case. And you've already got this. so.
I got it already.
Okay. All right, Mr. Whips.
Gentlemen, how are you?
Good.
Good.
We're talking to you, so we're doing good.
Yeah, yeah, every day above ground. Every day you're not having to deal with me, absolutely. So, the reason I requested presence today is I had a meeting with the funeral homes, and they raised a legitimate issue. I first want to start by prefacing for new commissioners and you, Mr. Chairman, the indigency program as it is and how we do it. The indigency program, some of you might know, was basically, for all intents and purposes, taken over by the state
not this last year, but the year before last year was the first time we realized it. They raised rates on death certificates, and with that, they created a special fund that, where we pay indigency fees up front. We turn in that paperwork to one of the Commissioners Association people at the end of the fiscal year, and then the state reimburses us that money. Probably one of the most important things you need to know is that the indigency program is not mine. Okay, it belongs to the commission. A couple years ago, I agreed with the prior commission verbally that I would manage that program and take care of it as far as the fiscal stuff and signing off on stuff. Because, you know, it's kind of in my purveyance. Probably 90% of the indigency cases that come aren't coroner's cases at all, but I still manage that. And I'm the only person apparently that can sign for these people cremation orders. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. So-
I'm Levi Dockendorf. I'm the manager at Bustards. Per statute, you know, when there's no family members that come forward, there's a chain of hierarchy there and who has the right of disposition. And the final rung then would be essentially the county would be the person to sign off if no one else is either available or willing to come forward to take care of a decedent.
So I do that for you guys now, and I'll continue to do it. But, so the issue that has come up is that in the end, the funeral homes, when we do either, it's kind of separated, unclaimed or indigent. Unclaimed are people that there is next of kin, however, they take no responsibility. Indigent is basically when they don't have any next of kin or anything else, and, or the funds to deal with it. They both fall under the same statute, basically. They're both same things, but they are separated in that basically one is an abandoned decedent and one is not. What happens now is that when someone goes indigent, the funeral homes let me know. We verify the indigency. They will then kick me an invoice. I'll do the cremation orders, and then they'll forward those invoices through me. I'll sign off on the stuff. I keep all the paperwork to turn in at the end of the year to the state, and then that gets passed off to you guys, obviously, to sign and pay. What happens to that indigent person in the very end is the issue, in that the funeral homes right now, even though in my opinion they don't have to, are dealing with the final disposition of that person, i.e. storing the remains. In this case, they all have been for a long time, cremated remains. Newcomer sends them off to Kansas City. Bustards, they're just stored in different places within your building, right?
Correct.
And it's not their responsibility to do that. Just like the family, once the business, i.e. the funeral homes, have contracted with that family, they provide a service, and then the disposition of that person is up to the family as far as the plot, the ossuary, whatever it's going to be, and it's out of their hands. With the indigency program, these folks are having to store those remains for God knows how long, and they don't have to. This should be something that the county takes care of. They're contracting with the funeral home to do that cremation and everything, but where those remains end up in the end is really up to the county. So I did a little research, just calling some other counties, trying to figure out what happens there, and it's kind of all over the board. Most counties take those remains and do something with them. They end up in the coroner's office, they end up, they have their own piece of county land where they get buried and put away. And I haven't found yet where the funeral homes take those. So I went to Highland just to see what it would cost and what the situation would be for us to have our own site for these people when everything's said and done. And it's not a cheap venture. To have basically a mausoleum to store cremated remains, you're looking in the $35,000 range for something that might store 40 or 50 people. We'd run out of room and have to deal with the problem again if we did something like that 4 or 5 years down the road, because we average, usually on average, probably 15 a year. I have a solution, all right, to put forward to you, and that would be that we basically buy a sea land van, or maybe we have one, or we can get one refurbished, or whatever the case may be. Put that on county property, and we can put that out at the morgue if you want, next to the other land van that's there, shelve it out, and then the funeral homes would basically turn over those cremains to the county, and that's where we would store them.
Did you say Seacan?
Yeah, like a sea land van, yep. I mean, for all intents and purposes, it does the same purpose as a mausoleum or something like that. But the deal with putting it in a cemetery is we have a lot of additional costs that are going to come with that if we have, both when we intern and put someone in it, and when maybe family comes forward, which does happen, and wants those remains back, the disinterment fees. So above and beyond what the state allows, the county would end up having to pick up some sort of budget continually for interment and disinterment in the cemetery. If we kept it in like a sea land van, that cost would be zero. The only thing we'd end up ever having to worry about is just that the current $1,500 by statute that we pay the funeral homes for them to do their services. And wouldn't have to worry about the whole interment, disinterment type of deal that goes on, and plot fees and you name it, so.
So Jim, how many, a little morbid, but how many of these could you actually store in say a 20 footer? Are you talking about a 40 footer? Or?
Well, if we had like a 40 footer, we're talking probably put 1,000 in there if you wanted, I'll bet, because, I mean, you shelve that thing out and 2 to a deal or whatever all along it, yeah, I mean.
Your average cremated remain, not even quite the size of a shoebox.
Yeah, I'm just, yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't, the closet, we use, they're currently stacked in a closet. You know, the closet's no more probably than 5 by 10 at the most.
So
and that's been years.
So basically, they're just identified, labeled accordingly, and then stored that way.
Correct. So the issue with us is it creates a liability issue because our contract is with the county. So the person who has the right to designate what happens to that urn is the county, not us. But it's in our physical custody, and it really shouldn't be, because we have families that will come in and they want that urn back. Well, the issue they have is actually with the county. They need to settle up with the county. If the county is going to require them to reimburse that money or release that urn, that's a decision because our contract was the county. It's not a decision that we can make. But we find ourselves in the middle of a fight, and it's creating both liability of just the storage space and then liability if one of these families decides to sue us because that urn is technically in our physical custody, even though we don't have a legal right to do anything with it unless we're directed to do so by the person we're contracted with, which in this case is the county.
So are you actually storing them in a true urn or in one of the boxes?
It's
I mean, one of
the utility urn. It's a black plastic box.
Okay.
How many do you have in your place?
So currently, when we changed ownership here about a year ago, we had, I think it was over 500 urns. Now, not all of those were indigent, some of those were unclaimed urns that we've had for decades in some cases that nobody ever came forward to. What we actually ended up doing is we sent a certified letter out to everybody, say this is your last chance. Nobody, a couple of people did come forward. Those have all been since buried. We bought a vault at our own expense, bought a cemetery plot, and we actually bury those all in the cemetery. So they are still recoverable if one of those family members ever wanted to come forward. In our letter, we stated that, it'll be at your cost to do so. But that was 6 months ago. I think currently in our custody, we have, it's between 15 and 20 sets of cremated remains right now that would be indigent.
And along those lines, just if I can interject on that piece, I can't find anywhere in statute, rule, anything, where it says they can't have those back, just come claim them, period. But we open up a Pandora's box, and we've seen this, where the word gets out that that's what's going on, then you have a flood of people that'll be like, yep, I'll let them go indigent, so that the county will pay for it, and then come claim them. So what I've been telling families, and again, this has only been, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 times I've had to do this, is you want them back, then you're going to reimburse the county the $1,500 and I'll get them back to you. But again, I have no legal precedent for that, because I can't find anywhere where it says that they'd have to pay back anything. They just come claim them. I just do that because of the chaos it would create if we didn't. And the families that I have talked to have come forward and paid back that money, and we give it to them. But that being the only real issue I see, but if we're storing them ourselves on county property, I mean, it makes it a lot easier and takes it out of the hands of the funeral homes trying to figure out what to do, because they're always calling me saying, well, I got this family, what do you want to do? So.
Thanks for being here today, Jim. It seems like a no-brainer to me to authorize you to get a CCAN in this $6,000 to $7,000 range, 40-footer, for you to identify a place out there at the morgue. You probably need to pour a pad for it, I would think, but.
Not necessarily.
At least some base, because those things do settle and they do move around. But in any event, somewhere where you're not going to need to move it, where it'll be stable, and it makes some sense to me to do that. I'd also think that what your practice is, your policy of requiring indigent claimants, claimants of indigent remains, reimburse the county, that ought to be put in the form of resolution and passed by the commissioners, so that then, there is at least more authority to do that, and maybe there's a disinterment administrative whatever fee on that too. I think the city has like 200, or was that?
Yeah,
So
it's like $200 or
something like that.
$300 every time you put someone in, put them out,
Yeah, but I think it's too much to ask of busters and newcomer to be doing this, and thank you for doing this as a community service for all these years. But yeah, that's not in anybody's best interest to keep doing that. Now, is this just with respect to indigent, or are we clear on that, and not with respect to unclaimed?
Well, basically, they're one and the same.
Well, you both made a distinction earlier in this discussion, and I just want us to be clear on what we're talking about and covering.
Mm-hmm.
From our perspective, they're one and the same. There's a body that has been basically dropped on our doorstep. Family walks away. It's in our physical custody, but at the end of the day, we're a private business, and it really shouldn't be our problem. I mean, it really should be a county problem with a county solution. At $1,500, I still lose money on these.
And when you say, Jim, 15 a year, is that both indigent and unclaimed?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. In either case, family next to kin can be found, say in a true indigent type of deal, and come forward, or if it's someone where they're abandoned in the past, they can still come forward. I talked to Eric about this a long time ago too. We have a lot of situations where the person, whether they're claimed or just plain flat indigent, has the funds in the estate to pay for funeral plus, but it just seems more problem than it's worth, and probably more expensive than that $1,500 to go against the estate and tie up our legal doing that to get those funds. So, you know, I mean,
What about some statutory change? Because you got to get, you got to, you know, when you're settling an estate, you have to check in with the state to make sure they haven't received state funds, Medicaid in particular.
yep.
And what if they had to check in with the county to get that, to get the county seal of approval?
Seal of approval.
Well,
Yeah.
you know, in order to get, because that's what
To
the
clear the state, yeah, and this is what Eric was telling me, was that he'd have to file something against the state that shows that the county is do something, and then when it finally gets cleared, it's just, at least according to him, and I don't know, that it's more time and effort than it's worth, and then trying to track that as it goes down the road.
I'm not,
So-
yeah, and I'm sorry, I'm not saying we ever enforce
Right.
it in that respect, but like as with the state on Medicare, like if you're Medicaid, if you're filing papers with in a probate proceeding, you have to make that affirmative representation that all funds due and owing to the state have been paid.
Mm.
Well, anyway, so that's outside all of what we can do here, other than talk to our legislators.
And Medicaid is a whole different beast too, in that, so we sometimes basically split funds, because if they qualify for the Medicaid will pay $500 towards that indigency, and then we turn around and pay $1,000 out of the $1,500. So I mean, yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that we verify with everybody, is that they're not Medicaid eligible, so.
Mr. Chairman,
Dallas?
when I read this, it says that we can request reimbursement for what we paid by the Department of Family Services for the expenses incurred under this subsection.
And that's that Medicaid piece. So, you know, whereas, and Levi might be able to speak to it better, we require that the funeral homes in this process check in with Medicaid to see whether or not the person's eligible. If the person's eligible, they make a request to the Department of Family and Services for that $500 payment. We turn around and pay the other part of that, which instead of $1,500 would be $1,000 to make up the total of the 15. But they do request reimbursement whenever they're eligible.
You know, I don't think it's legal to extract money out of the relatives to give them the remains. I think that's totally illegal.
Yeah, that's what I
I
was
think
trying to
it's
say to
extortion,
start with,
truthfully.
is I've found no statute or anything that says they can't just come forward.
Yeah, I mean,
and claim.
they're indigent, so the money isn't owed. So you can't hold up a relative for $1,500 to get his great uncle's ashes. I mean, I think that would cause us some serious problems.
Well, and again, this, I guess, is where we make that distinction between actual indigency and unclaimed. You know, as an example, we had it hasn't been too long ago, a lady that died, we were searching for months and finally found. I mean, she was worth millions. But the family left her unclaimed because they were fighting amongst themselves,
Yeah.
and were like, you know, all we want is her money.
And all of that, though, doesn't have any bearing on whether we can force somebody to pay money to get the ashes out of there.
No, and I agree with you, Dallas, on that.
Or even if they're a millionaire. You file a claim with their estate, and the judge will hear it, and it would declare that they owe the money and pay it.
Mhm.
I don't think it's nearly the legal problem that you've been told.
Yeah, it's like I said, the only reason I have told families in the past that they're gonna have to reimburse the county was to keep from starting what we saw as everybody all of a sudden unclaiming their relative so they didn't have to pay that expense knowing they were gonna get the remains in the end. So, and that was honestly just a personal decision on my part to put that out there to them, to say, hey, you need to pay us back the money that we spent, you know, and I'll give you your remains. And
And I can speak to that a little bit. You're absolutely right. I don't know how it works. The county would have a different status than a funeral home, but absolutely, once we cremate that body, we have no obligation to perform the cremation, but once we do cremate that body, we have absolutely zero, we cannot hold those cremated remains.
It would be the same as holding the body.
Correct.
We
which can't
decided
do
not
out
to
there.
cremate the body, and the body's there, and some nephew comes in, and he says, well, I'll give you your uncle for, $5,000.
Correct.
I don't see I think that's a real legal problem for some
It
of
is.
us.
Homes have lost that lawsuit repeatedly, and so no funeral would hold that body. That's where we're getting into this. We're in physical custody of that body. That's, whatever the county wants to do with it, that's up to the county, but it's putting us in a bad spot, because at that point, our contract is not with that person, so I cannot release the urn to that person because my contract's not with them. But it's up to county then to decide, can I release it to them? I maybe mention, somebody hit on it, of having a disinterment fee. That might be a way around that, if you wanted to recoup those costs, where you're not paying for the cremation, but once you go out there and it's locked in that van, there's a $1,500 disinterment fee for it to be returned. That might be a way around that. Because it would be a problem, I can just tell you. If it gets out there in the ether, that all you have to do is walk away, the county will pay for the cremation, then you can show up and take the urn. We're gonna have droves of that.
So,
I don't know what the solution is.
Jim, what I think we'll do is, obviously Jared's been listening to everything we've been talking about here, so we'll have legal look into it and see what can be done, because I somewhat disagree with Dallas in the respect that the taxpayers are the ones paying that. Somebody's paying, so it would only make sense that a family member would have to come back and be the ones to pay for the remains or reimburse the taxpayers the money that was expended. So we could argue this for hours, but I think that having legal look into it and give us a legal opinion on what we can and can't do, and if it's a resolution that we need to pass saying that, if money's expended, you come to get the remains, you're expected to pay that back, then that's the direction we go.
And for clarification, since they changed the statute, it isn't the taxpayer that's paying it. So they added fees to all the other families to get their death certificates. They added an extra $10.
They essentially doubled the cost of the
Yeah,
death
they
certificates.
doubled the cost of the death certificate. And so every other family out there is paying that, because we turn that in for reimbursement to the state, and that's where it's coming from.
Okay. The other question I would have is if we go the route of this sea container itself and you found a place to put it, do you guys have a fenced yard back out there, or?
It's not fenced, but we currently have a sea can back there as it is with all the records that we pulled out of here. But it is secure. We're attached to the county fire. I mean, it's
Right.
monitored.
The only thing I would add to that is the police department got hit with graffiti on the front door last night, so.
Yeah.
So as secure as it might be, that would be my only concern. And then, I know you talked to Highland, but I'm wondering if maybe it's not a conversation that we have with the city themselves and see if there isn't a piece of land. It's almost like, I sitting here thinking about it, it's, there's a section that is devoted just simply to
They
children.
currently
out there.
basically have a potter's field there in Highland right now. But like I said, what you run into is what's not going to be reimbursed by the state, and that'll be all the fees that they're going to charge for intern, disinterring, and all of that, so.
Yeah, I'm thinking if we, county and city, work together on this, I mean, it's just as much our problem as it is theirs, and I think if we work together on it, then.
What do they do in bigger cities? Surely somebody like New York City, they gotta have something they do with all those people that die.
I'm sure they got huge
Well,
mausoleums or they bury them, huh?
There's a lot of scattering that's going on in the indigents. The one problem we have in Wyoming is even from a funeral home perspective, most states have a statute that specifies, if the urn is unclaimed for 90 days or a year or 10 years or whatever their number they put on it, it directs the funeral home and what they can do with that set of remains.
So it does
They
sound
can
like we
scatter. But-
might have a loophole where we need to have some legislation passed.
The Wyoming statute they don't address it at all.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure we could pass a resolution, make anybody pay for their dead people. I think it's going to require a state statute to do that.
And that's why we're having legal
Yeah.
get involved. We'll let legal do their job,
Yeah, I
so.
appreciate you guys addressing it, because that's the problem. As a funeral home, we've been trying to navigate this, and there's just no direction on it.
Yep.
Which is why we have people stacked up in the closet.
I like the idea of this sea container to a certain point. I just would hate for somebody to be able to get in there and then decide to do what people do, and then you have a bigger mess than what it is. So I'm behind that, but I would also like just maybe a little bit of time that we could talk across the street and see if there's something that we can do to, that it won't cost a lot, but would be a little bit more secure inside of the cemetery itself, so. I guess everybody's okay with that, so. All right. Anything else?
No, not unless you have some other questions. Like I said, I'm bringing it to you because it's not my decision to make,
Right,
so, yeah.
right.
Well, maybe in fairness, Mr. Chairman, maybe in fairness to the funeral homes, we can shoot for 30 days to reconnect either formally or informally, and start to build some momentum. Because it doesn't sound complicated, but I think the chairman made a good point about, graffiti and fenced yards, and somebody figures out, where it is, or they don't want to come up with $1,500 or $200 disinterment,
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that I'm thinking too is that the document you gave to us that has all of these on there, I mean, yeah, it's money, but at the same time, how many of these do you have a year?
15. And I think you look at the one that says like $35,000, I think it only stores like, 40 people. So like I said, you'd be dealing with having to do it all over again 5 years down the road, so.
But I'm also looking at like this one right here is $5,000 and it holds 20 of them, right? No, it holds 48. So, I mean, to me, $5,000, I mean, I don't want to be spending it every year, every 2 years, but if you could do this and take care of the issues, and then as we need them, we'll add to them,
I don't know, it's like you get that 1,000 in for the same money, pretty much. It's one and
You might
done,
want
Mr.
to
Chairman.
consider talking to the monument companies here in town. These are specifically designed for individual urns, but they might be able to build something that was just basically a big square where you could put shelving in it and you could stack up hundreds in there.
the only reason I was thinking something like this is somebody comes along and says, hey, I want to pick up Grandma Lucy, and she just happens to be in box number 3 here. You can reuse that. She comes out and somebody else goes back in there, and so I don't know how many people actually come and claim them, but
I've only, like even in the last year, like 2 people that you've talked to me about. And
When
like
we
I said, I
just-
don't know about Newcomer because, like I said, they ship them off to Kansas City, and I know when the family does come forward, if they come forward, they bear the cost of shipping them back from Kansas City, and families aren't paying for that. But, it's like I said, to start with, this isn't an expense, I believe, that these 2 businesses need to bear, because it's really not
right.
their deal, yeah.
Yep, and I'm not saying put those in there at anybody else's expense. I'm just trying to find the best way of being able to secure them and be able to get to them if you need to return them.
And if it's an issue with the city, if they would waive interment, disinterment, all that, and just have me or one of my people do that, forego the fee altogether, and I'll just take stuff out and put it in and out, so.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to know, though, if we've ever, it says by August 1st of each year, a county may request reimbursement by the Department of Family Services for the expenses incurred under this subsection for the preceding fiscal year. I'm wondering if we've ever asked for these monies to be returned to us.
I
And
look
if
at
not,
Jared and like he has the answer, but,
And if not, why not?
well, that's something we could look into.
We do now, like I said, there's someone in the Commissioners Association that heads this whole deal. We turn over all of the paperwork and everything. They compile it for all the counties, and then the state turns around and reimburses us, and that was done last year.
Sure, mine.
Yeah, that was done last year, and we, I'm sure, got all our money back. I don't see it, but I'm pretty sure that probably happened. So.
Do we know how much of this $1,500 we paid last year even? Did we pay any $1,500, like the statute says, for indigent people? I mean, I don't know that.
I track that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I do for you.
And so how many did we pay for?
Last year, I want to say it was right on 15.
Did we then apply to the government to get the money back?
We applied through the Commissioners Association, all that paperwork to get the money back from the state, yes.
And did we get it back?
I don't know. I'm assuming so, because at that point, it's completely out of my hands. This should all be out of my hands anyway, but yeah.
Well, I'd hate to think we got the money back and then somebody came and wanted their uncle and they had to pay another $1,500.
No, so when that's happened, like I said, it's only happened to me twice. I pull their indigency paperwork that goes to the state, and we don't claim it. Does that make sense? So I don't turn it into the state. If they've turned around and paid that $1,500, I basically make it non-indigent, pull that paperwork, and we don't ask for that reimbursement.
So
I put it back in the county. So I put it, give it to the treasurer and put it back into the general fund.
So we can find out from the clerk whether that was reimbursed, but I do have a question. So if you pull one in, and let's say 3 years, we get paid back for that, and then 3 years later down the road, somebody comes and says, hey, I want to claim so-and-so, do they just get to claim those without any fees at that point, being the state already paid for it, or does the state get reimbursed that money, or do you have any idea?
And this is so new that, just in my personal opinion, I mean, we'd have to, if we did something like that, we'd have to pay the state back.
The state, yep.
Whether that's by not claiming one for the upcoming fiscal year that we're going into, or something like that. Some way we knock that money off, because it is that special fund that's created just for that.
Just have a credit on the books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as the point's been made, more than likely, actually, we shouldn't be asking them for that money anyway, so.
Under this statute, I don't think we
Yeah,
should be.
yeah. And like I said, I can't find anywhere where it says that people need to pay for it. I've just asked for it, and I haven't demanded it, I've asked for it in a couple cases, and they paid, just to keep the chaos from being run over by everybody with it, so.
Okay, if you could give us 30 days, just like Peter said, and then we can get some answers back and give Jared some time to do some research and give us time to talk to the city and see what we can come up with.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
I'm just glad we don't have a city where 10,000 indigents a year die, like LA.
LA has their own, just curious, LA actually has their own crematories. The county has their own crematories, which they have multiple, and they run pretty much 24 hours a
Oh,
day.
really?
I don't know what they do with the cremated remains after the fact, but I know some of those bigger counties, kind of like LA.
Fly over
LA
the
specifically.
Pacific Ocean?
What's that?
Fly over the Pacific Ocean?
There's in Colorado, there was a county I worked in, it'll remain nameless, but I know for a fact that all of those end up at the bottom of Lake Powell, so.
I think a lawsuit going on about that one right now, or someone went to jail, something, but yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, my God. I didn't expect this one today.
So we're rolling into attorney review.
I saw Charmaine walking around in the hall. cover everything except that you're planning on coming down here.
Do we do an agenda review first?
Well, the two agenda, we can handle part of this right now. Two agenda reviews, she's gonna go over all the contracts for tonight, with what we've got going on.
Here she comes.
We're ready for you.
I don't have, you guys don't know what's in my house. It's gotta be that thing. Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I don't really have any update. I do have something to present to you in the executive session, legal advice.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, before we go into executive, before you get
I had a couple other things, but go ahead. No, go ahead.
No,
Go ahead.
no. I just thought you were looking for a motion for executive.
Nope,
real quick.
not yet.
Go ahead.
I just want to look at future agenda items, so if you guys would just take a look at that back sheet. If you have things, I really do want to stick with the, making sure that those deadlines that we had set, that certain things get in by certain dates. So if you got paperwork or presentations, that we try and hit those so that we're not at the 10th hour giving packets out to everybody to have them review them and try and get caught up on before the meeting shows up. If you have things you need to get on here, like right now, if you look at the 16th of May, we've got Christie at 2:45 and then legal update at 3:30 after that, but everything's open before that. So if you have things you need to get onto the agenda, let me know so we can get them in there, or let me know and we'll get with Michelle and get them on there. And then, as you can see on the 5th and 6th, on the 5th, on Monday, we canceled the department head meeting, so we can have budgets all day, and then the 6th is the same way. That meeting won't happen, we're just gonna do budget hearings that day. So if you need things to hit before the 5th and 6th, we need to make sure we get them onto the 16th. Peter?
Mr. Chairman, and Michelle isn't here right now, but I find it a challenge to spend the time I want to spend on some of these contracts when we get them the night before the meeting. I think unless it's an emergency, we shouldn't even consider them at our work session or at our meeting. That was the resolution on horse racing. I think it's even a challenge to get contracts and resolutions and have adequate time to review, confer with one another, confer with council, when we get them on a Friday afternoon, which is kind of the typical. And I don't fault Michelle for that, and I don't fault the county attorney's office for that, but I just think that what that means is we have to look at it over the weekend, and then if I have a question or a concern, and I want to visit with you or my other fellow commissioners, then I get to bother them over the weekend, or cram it in Monday or Tuesday morning. And I don't think that does us and the county justice. And so I feel like we need more time. I would prefer a week, but at least a couple business days before the meeting. Otherwise, it's just not on the agenda. I know we ought to make exceptions and bend the rules for certain things, but I think it's a problem because I have had some, I think, substantive comment on some of these contracts and resolutions and just haven't felt like people have had the time.
And I would refer back to our form that was put out here a month ago that had, or longer than that actually had deadlines put on it so we don't run into this problem. So that we actually have half a week ahead of time, the weekend and part of the next week. So that's what I'm saying. Again, going back and looking at future agenda items to please abide by that stuff so that we do have adequate time, and we're not putting people off that realistically are just looking to get an answer so that they can move forward on the project. Because if we don't get it to them, then they're another 2 weeks out, and now we become a month behind. So I most certainly want that adhered to. Do you have anything else?
The City of Casper contract for transportation services, I was hoping to get with County Legal on that and maybe give some of my feedback, whether or not changes are necessary or not. I think we like them. I think it'd be better for the county if we did make some of the changes. I know they were approved in the form. I think that the date for this, like a $13,000 contract, I think the date was July 1st. So it seems like we could maybe push that one off, unless there's a compelling reason to deal with it at this meeting.
And Mr.
Sherman.
Chair, thank you. It's July 1st, 2022. And so it's,
We can't hear you.
I'm sorry, it's July 1st, 2022.
So we're a year behind on it?
Yes.
Why is that?
I don't know.
Well, then what's cumulative?
I don't disagree.
That was July 1st, 2022. I thought the period was 2022 to June 30th, 2023. But in any event, I still think we can hold off on that. It's not the biggest contract in the world.
And Mr. Chair, I guess I'll toss this out there. The city has wanted, and I'm not disagreeing with Commissioner Nicolason at all, but the city has wanted that contract moved forward, and the city has also helped us out a couple of times lately, pushing some of the things we need. And so that's why I added it to the agenda. The term expires June 30th, 2023. I don't see how 2 more weeks really matters at this point.
Any changes that would be made to that, any changes that would be made to that contract are only going to be in effect then, essentially, for a month, correct? Month and a half?
Are we going to redo it, though? Are we going to do it for the next fiscal year?
Presumably, yes, and
That would be a
it
new
might
contract.
be useful to let it ride, your decision, obviously, but let it ride and fix the new one.
Well, I guess correct me if I'm wrong then. If this is if this ends up running out June 30th, this doesn't have an automatic renewal in there, we would have a new contract that would come forward, correct?
I don't recall that provision one way or the other, but I'll look real quickly while we're,
Because I wouldn't want to really just sign off on it if it has an automatic renewal, we have issues with it, so.
Mr. Chairman?
Dels?
I was handed this memo from the Natrona County Legal Department, and I'm not sure this isn't something that needs to be discussed in a executive session.
It is. Right.
Because,
Needs to go back to Michelle.
yeah, okay, thank you.
As a point of order, I think that I'd like clarification on whether we're going to deal with the city contract tonight or not. And I hear what everybody's saying. I hear both sides. My preference would be to negotiate it now rather than have this one done, and then however many other projects get in our way, and then we're a year down the road, we're dealing with this again. And I think the easy thing is to say, okay, we'll get the city a contract that's one-sided. I think the better practice would be to negotiate our points now and have adequate time, and frankly, have more leverage now. I don't know that.
And that's what I was asking, was to make sure it doesn't have an automatic renewal in there, so that if it, I guess either way, if we took another 2 weeks to look at it and make the corrections that need to be made, whether it's got an automatic renewal or not, I don't see an issue in it, because I somewhat agree. I get the city's helped us out, but we've also gone 11 months or 10 months on a contract that's not been agreed upon. Anybody got an issue in holding that for 2 more weeks so we can go through it? Okay.
Thanks.
Charmaine, let's take that one off for tonight then. Are the rest of these on here ones that need to get through tonight?
I believe so. The ratifications, definitely the Circle Drive, that is just a continuation of getting everything in place for Road and Bridges project up on the mountain, and needs to be taken care of. The window and door one is not urgent, other than to try and get the new doors on the outhouses at the lake prior to Memorial Day.
I think, Charmaine, on that, I recall seeing a completion date no later than April 23rd. Does that sound right?
If that's what it said, it's not what I meant. I wanted it to be like the week before, like May 23rd maybe, or, so if it says April, then that's not what I intended. Plus.
My recollection was that it had the contractor was going to have a completion date in April. So we might check that.
Some of these got pushed back because of the weather.
Yeah, if I were the contractor, I wouldn't sign that. Those are quite a few
No,
doors.
there was a lot of them that got pushed back because of the weather this year. I know a lot of the stuff, just like the completion date at Pathfinder got pushed back from May until June because of all the snow, and a lot of this stuff was the same way because of the access and everything. So they were trying to get it done before the big push at Memorial Day.
And Mr. Chair, I don't think the extraterritorial contract for the sheriff is urgent. I added that one because we had one just like it recently, and it was easy for me to get to you, but not urgent.
Does anybody have any issues with that one? It looked pretty straightforward.
The windows and doors, okay. And Mr. Chair, on the contract with Casper Window and Door, I have no later than May 25th, 2023, contractor will perform.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was one of, anyway, thank you for checking that. I'm trying to pull it up.
All right, so if everybody's good with that, can I get a motion to go into executive session?
I make a motion that we go into executive session for legal issues.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner North, second by Commissioner Laird. All in favor? Any opposed? We're in executive session.
Are you guys taking a break before you go in?
Do you need us to?
I just need to talk to one or both of them at some point today, so I can do it now or I can do it when they're done. It's up to you.
Why don't you do it right now? And then we'll get it set up and then we'll do it.
I suppose.